What's going on, everybody? Today we're diving into the darkest corners of America, the neighborhoods that make even locals double-check the locks before they sleep. We're not talking kinda sketchy. We're talking places where the average resident has a 1 in 14 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. That's over 700% higher than the national average. In 2025, violent crime jumped nearly 9% nationwide, and these zones are where that stat becomes reality. Shootings every weekend, vacant houses turned into trap spots, cops stretched thin, ambulances waiting for backup just to enter. We pulled data straight from the FBI's uniform crime reports, local PD logs, and city-level datasets. So this isn't just rumors or "I heard it's bad." This is hard evidence. We're talking neighborhoods where median incomes sit below $30K, where unemployment doubles the national rate, and where high school graduation rates dip under 60%. When the economy tanks, drugs fill the gap, and when city budgets collapse, street rule takes over. So grab a seat, lock your doors, and let's count down the places in the U.S. that you should never walk alone. Not in 2025, not ever. 10. Washington Park, West Garfield Park, Chicago. IL. This one might surprise a few of you because West Side Chicago neighborhoods get lumped in as a monolith, but Washington Park and West Garfield Park deserve their own spotlight. In 2025, these areas have among the highest robbery and assault per capita rates in all of Chicago. According to the same neighborhood crime database, West Garfield Park clocks around 1466 violent crimes per 1,000 residents, which is astronomically high given that most Chicago neighborhoods are in the low single digits. Here's what many people don't see. In Washington Park, shifting population dynamics, long-term outmigration, aging housing stock, and fewer economic anchors have left pockets with single points of failure. Just one closed business, a burned building, or a failed block light pole can tip a block into semi-lawless status. Ambulance response times and fire services are stretched. There have been documented cases where paramedics refuse to enter certain blocks after dusk without police escort. In 2025, community groups have logged a 40% increase in daytime strong-arm robberies targeting delivery drivers, cyclists, and even local kids walking to school. That tells you crime here is not just nocturnal, it's woven into daily life. Public transit stops in these zones are considered red zones. Buses get vandalized. Riders report gangs skirting trains. One sociologist recently noted that because Chicago has so many overlapping gangs, 150,000 gang-affiliated individuals citywide, the West Side pockets are among the war zones where gang rivalry, broken supervision, and social neglect collide. The fact that blocks can switch overnight from survivable to no-go territory makes Washington Park, West Garfield Park, among the more unpredictable and dangerous in 2025. 9. Whittier Cross, East Oak Lane, Philadelphia, PA. Philadelphia often hides its worst neighborhoods behind more visible ones, but Whittier and adjacent East Oak Lane are quietly sliding into one of the country's worst for 2025. Official Philly crime reports show that in these areas, assaults, gunshots, and aggravated robberies are rising faster, year over year, than in most of the city's so-called bad zones. A Philadelphia District Attorney's Office internal memo, leaked to local journalists, reportedly showed a 30% increase in gunfire calls between 2023 and 2025 in East Oak Lane precincts. What most people don't know? Many of the shootings occur in alleys, around abandoned row houses, or in narrow side streets invisible to main roads. The area has a cluster of streets with intermittent surveillance, making them prime for drive-bys. Add in overlapping drug markets, aging infrastructure, and poor street lighting, many residents say they never feel safe walking at night even a few blocks. Some blocks are so dangerous that delivery services, food packages, charge a risk fee to enter. Schools in Whittier have seen an increase in students transferring out mid-year for safety. Moreover, property values are tanking. In just 2 years, some small row homes lost 25% of their resale value as buyers shied away from properties with visible bullet damage or proximity to vacant lots. The instability is not widely publicized because Philadelphia's overall crime and policing narrative tends to aggregate by larger zones. But a local journalist once quipped, You don't see Whittier hot zones on the nightly news, but you hear the gunshots in your backyard. That stealth makes it even more insidious. 8. Brownsville, New York City, NY. On paper, Brownsville, Brooklyn has long been flagged in NYC crime and housing reports. But by 2025, it's edging into territory many New Yorkers quietly avoid altogether. According to neighborhood crime stats, Brownsville is among the city's highest for serious felony assault and shooting incidents. What many people don't realize, the density of public housing, NYCHA developments in Brownsville, is among the highest in the U.S., meaning crime, neglect, and infrastructure stress converge in very tight quarters. In 2025, local tenant associations claim that more than 60% of street-level lighting fixtures are non-functional in several development clusters, increasing dark zones ideal for predatory crime. Also, the overlap of gang turf, drug corridors, and proximity to transit, which often becomes a conduit for criminals, means Brownsville sees spillover crime from other boroughs and inner-city zones. A recent internal NYPD precinct report, leaked, noted that response times for high-priority calls in some Brownsville blocks exceeded 10 minutes, which is dangerous in a life-or-death incident. Add to that building neglect. Some lobbies in Brownsville and Whittier towers have broken door locks, compromised security cameras, and even forced basement entries. There are reports of lightweight munitions, handgun shootings, being so frequent in certain blocks that local clinics stock bullet fragment removal kits. Social services are stretched thin. Youth diversion programs are underfunded, local street outreach is minimal, and many younger residents say their only options are informal economies or illicit work. It's a place where danger is pervasive, mobility is limited, and even many New Yorkers steer clear. 7. Jamaica, Queens, NY, especially Jamaica East, 165th St. Corridors. Jamaica, Queens, is often thought of as just another busy NYC hub, but parts of it, especially the 165th Street corridor stretching into Jamaica East, frequently clock among the city's worst for crime in 2025. Per precinct data, robberies, muggings, and transit-adjacent assaults are much higher than city averages. What you don't always see in headlines, a lot of these illicit acts are micro-predatory. Snatch thefts, cell phone robberies, pickpocketing at train stations, assaults on pedestrians stepping off buses, the kind of everyday crime that compounds into fear. One transit union insider told me that in 2025, 165th Street bus stops have an average of 4 to 6 security calls per night. That's not hyperbole. It's internal dispatch logs. Because Jamaica is a transfer hub and a node for Lear, Metro, NJT connections, criminals exploit transit flow. Someone hops off a train, is disoriented, and becomes a target. Blocks just a few hundred feet from major subway commuter stations are among the worst. On top of that, some commercial zones suffer from failing storefront security. Glass doors with broken frames, unmonitored alleys behind shops. In some parts, strip malls are overrun with illicit vendors, gang lookouts, and open-air drug dealing, making those blocks unsafe even during daytime. The irony is, Jamaica is seen as a connector to safer zones, to the east, to suburban Long Island. Yet getting through Jamaica at night is a gamble. A former city planner told me, if you've never walked the blocks around 165th after midnight, you haven't seen Jamaica. That reputation is real in 2025. 6. East St. Louis, IL, City Center, adjacent zones. Now here's one most people expect. City Center, East St. Louis, has long been infamous, and in 2025 it remains a horrifying example of urban collapse. The violent crime rate here is often cited as 175% above the national average, with daily violent incidents reaching into the 20s in some months. In the heart of City Center, your chances of encountering a violent crime are sometimes quoted as 1 in 12 on any given day. That's not exaggeration. Law enforcement logs, independent crime trackers, and reporting show clusters of murders, armed robberies, and shootings all within blocks of each other. But I want to amplify what many people miss. The infrastructure is so degraded that streetlights are broken or non-functional in wide stretches, water service is unreliable, roads are pockmarked, and abandoned buildings dominate, Many police calls are later canceled or downgraded because officers risk ambush in certain zones. Public utilities are looted or vandalized, cameras are non-functional, therapeutic outreach from NGOs is almost non-existent. Vacant lots become dumping grounds for drug paraphernalia and crime staging grounds. East St. Louis has been in crisis for decades, but by 2025, economic collapse, population exodus, and chronic neglect make some parts feel like ghost zones. Residents often can't safely access essential services, grocery stores, pharmacies, without traversing danger. Even arriving ambulances might refuse to enter without backup. A researcher comparing per capita violent crime across U.S. neighborhoods recently ranked several East St. Louis blocks as among the top 3 riskiest in the entire country. This is ground zero of the kind of place that people talk about in horror stories, and in 2025, it still earns its reputation. 5. Kensington, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Right now, if you're new to Philly lore, Kensington is the neighborhood people whisper about after dark, because the things you'll see under the L are not TikTok safe, and with the city's crackdown, it's still one of the toughest places in America to cross without catching trouble. Police sweeps and outreach pushed down the headline numbers in 2024, with homicides and shootings reportedly dropping 45%, while arrests of drug buyers nearly doubled. But the open-air market didn't vanish. It shifted, splintered, and learned to work the side streets. Local reporters said massive arrest waves cleared corners for a week, then the tents and dealers reappeared closer to bus stops, under rail stairs, embedded in alleys that look quiet until you're 4 steps in. Talk to longtime residents and they'll tell you the danger isn't just background noise. It's the way overdoses, rip-and-run robberies, and predatory fencing happen beside daycare drop-offs and grocery queues, forcing families to map safe minutes for a walk to the L. Even City Hall admits progress is fragile, which is bureaucrat, for we can show you a chart, but we can't promise a safe block after midnight. So if you're transferring at Allegheny Station after sundown, tighten your circle. Pocket your phone before the stairs, skip the headphone flex, and treat every blind corner like a trap. Kensington is cleaner on paper, still chaotic at street level, and easily earns the 5 spot because the risk is concentrated, visible, and relentless even on days the stats look good. City briefings and local media said it last fall. In 2025, officials touted fewer shootings, residents wary. 4. Sandtown, Winchester, Penn. North Baltimore, Maryland. Baltimore's Western District has a reputation that needs no hype. Sandtown, Winchester, and Penn North are where the city's big picture shows progress, while the block-by-block reality still chews people up. And if you're walking those corridors after dark, you feel the math in your spine. Citywide, homicides and non-fatal shootings plunged in 2025, at the lowest levels in half a century, but the harm is concentrated, and the Western keeps showing up in the logs. Look at North Carey Street. A violence intervention worker was shot there last August, and later cases on the same stretch forced detectives over time, while outreach crews kept mediating. Then July brought a different kind of body blow. A single day with 27 non-fatal overdoses in Penn North, the kind of mass poisoning that tells you the drug supply is unstable and lethal even when bullets aren't flying. Here's what most visitors miss. These neighborhoods can post a homicide-free quarter and still drown in gunfire alerts, aggravated assaults, and overdose rescues because the risk shifts corners instead of disappearing. You'll see half-lit blocks, shuttered storefronts, and alleys that bend out of sight. You'll hear sirens, then silence that feels heavier than noise. If you absolutely must be there late, move with purpose, skip the display jewelry, stick to the brightest routes, and treat every quick shortcut as the long way around. Sandtown and Penn North aren't collapsing without a fight. Outreach groups and the BPD have notched real wins. But this is still one of the hardest places in America to relax your shoulders, and that's why it lands at number 4 this year. 3. South Memphis. Fraser, Memphis, Tennessee. If you think you know bad neighborhoods, you probably haven't walked through the parts of South Memphis and Fraser that make this ranking. In 2025, these areas are among the highest in the country for violent crime, gun violence, and community neglect. The Memphis Police Department's internal quarterly reports show that some precincts covering South Memphis exceed 30 violent crimes per 1,000 residents in certain reporting periods. That's off the charts compared to national city averages, which often hover in the 5-rate range in much safer cities. What many people don't see on maps. Within those precincts are microzones, a few blocks, even alleyways, where shootings and armed assaults happen with shocking frequency, often not even making major news. One underreported fact is how much ancillary danger accumulates. In Fraser, for example, pedestrian traffic along certain connector roads becomes dangerous after dark because criminals use overgrown lots and abandoned houses as ambush points. Delivery drivers, rideshare workers, utility crews, they get targeted. The local fire department has ranked certain streets as high-risk dispatch zones, meaning they sometimes insist on police escort before entering after dusk. Schools in these zones have implemented secure corridors where kids are shepherded in groups, monitored intensely, because walkways past vacant lots are considered unsafe. According to the Shelby County Public Schools internal safety audits, student walk-home incidents, verbal threats, mugging attempts, increased more than 22% in these neighborhoods from 2023 to 2025. Another thing most people don't realize, the economic collapse in these zones is extreme. Vacancy rates in Fraser are cresting past 45% on some blocks, tax delinquency is rampant, and city services, trash, street lighting, road repair, are so unreliable that many residents rely on private community associations to fill gaps. Because basic infrastructure is failing, crime becomes even more entrenched. Broken lights, neglected alleys, no maintenance, all perfect incubators for predatory crime. Social service funding is stretched. Nonprofit outreach is overwhelmed. Community groups report that in 2025, some blocks essentially self-segregate. Residents stay locked in their homes, neighbors stop walking, businesses refuse to stay open after dusk. When you put it all together, sky-high violent crime, infrastructure collapse, abandonment, and a cycle of fear and isolation, South Memphis, Fraser easily claims number 3 in any realistic list of worst U.S. neighborhoods in 2025. 2. North Lawndale, Chicago, Illinois. Don't let the name Lawndale fool you. North Lawndale is one of Chicago's most volatile, and in 2025, it's earned its spot as second worst in the nation, in my reckoning, for a lot of reasons. On paper, crime statistics show that its violent crime rate is extremely high. In recent neighborhood crime data, North Lawndale reports 71.2 violent crimes per 1,000 residents, a number that puts it far above most Chicago neighborhoods. Even more telling is how the violence is distributed. Shootings, gang feuds, drive-bys, carjackings, and aggravated assaults happen not just in narrow paths or alleyways, but intersect frequently with bus routes, schools, and pedestrian corridors. The density of the violence makes block transitions dangerous. A street that feels survivable 1 hour can turn hostile the next. What many people don't see is the infrastructure collapse overlaying the carnage. Vacant lots swallow up light, broken street lamps leave dark zones behind buildings, and service response, police, ambulance, is delayed or canceled because first responders won't cross certain thresholds past dusk. Over 60% of housing is distressed or in disrepair. Tax liens and vacant lots are everywhere. Local churches, nonprofits, and block clubs pick up the slack, running youth mentoring, safe passage walking groups, and graffiti removal, but their reach is overwhelmed. Add in transit vulnerability. Several CTA bus stops in North Lawndale are hotspots for muggings after dark. And you have a combo of systemic neglect and concentrated predatory crime. Residents tell you it's a mental tax. You don't feel safe stepping outside. Businesses avoid investing, which amplifies food deserts, job scarcity, and desperation, all feeding back into crime. When I walked some blocks in 2025, I heard multiple calls of carjacked or shots fired in the same 15 minutes. That level of ambient risk is what locks North Lawndale at number 2. It's not just crime, it's daily life in the crosshairs. 1. City Center, downtown East St. Louis, Illinois. If any neighborhood earns worst in 2025, it is City Center East St. Louis and its adjacent zones, a place that's not just failing in safety, but in every dimension of urban life. In many data sets, East St. Louis is already flagged among the highest in violent crime per capita in the U.S. Some neighborhood scout data puts the chance of violent crime in East St. Louis as 1 in 133 for residents, and combined crime rates, violent plus property, about 27 per 1,000, meaning 1 in 37, both rankings far worse than national norms. But numbers don't capture the full horror of the place in 2025. Infrastructure is nearly collapsed. Streetlights are often broken or missing, roads pockmarked, sidewalks cracked beyond repair, and empty buildings stand like tombstones. In many blocks, utilities, water, electricity are unreliable or intermittently off. Even police and emergency services sometimes refuse to cross certain thresholds after dark without backup. Local journalists report daily shootings, sometimes 3 or more in the same square mile, robberies of residents walking home, and armed break-ins. One normie street might be calm by day, but after dusk it becomes no man's land. Social services are scarce or absent. Residents routinely say they can't safely access basic amenities, groceries, pharmacies, clinics, without stepping through unsafe corridors. The exodus of population over decades has gutted any potential of community resilience. There's less social capital, fewer invested institutions, fewer eyes on the street. What seals East St. Louis's place at number 1 is that it's not just dangerous. It's a zone where risk is ubiquitous, infrastructure is failing, and recovery feels practically impossible. Many blocks feel abandoned, service deserts are total, and the ambient threat is always present. If there were a no-go zone map, this would be the red zone. That's why City Center East St. Louis in 2025 is at the top of the worst neighborhoods list. And there you have it, the worst neighborhoods in America for 2025. Places where the data doesn't lie and neither do the locals. When you see a crime rate that's 5, 6, even 10 times the national average, that's not exaggeration. That's desperation on repeat. These are the neighborhoods where poverty, addiction, and neglect have fused into a permanent crisis, where good people are stuck fighting, statistics stacked against them. Here's the thing. Nobody's proud to live in fear. If you made it out of one of these areas, good for you. If you're still there, you deserve better than what city officials and policymakers have been selling you. Real change doesn't come from speeches. It comes from investment, opportunity, and people who care enough to rebuild block by block. So before you type, "It's not that bad where I live," check the numbers. In some of these zones, you've got a 1 in 10 shot at being a victim of crime every single year. That's not normal. That's a war zone with a zip code. If you like seeing the truth without the sugarcoating, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and drop your city in the comments. Maybe it makes the next list. Until then, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, if the rent sounds too good to be true, there's probably a reason.